Thank you, Madam Speaker. A few questions for the proponent of the bill, if I may.
Please proceed, sir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Unfortunately, Representative O'Neill already covered some of the questions I'm going to ask you. Fortunate for the proponent. But there are a few things I'd like to flesh out a little bit, if I may. Representative O'Neill talked about different groups and organizations that may have access to public housing and the facilities within and without them. And I'd just like to find out a little bit. Representative O'Neill mentioned perhaps the Nazi Party. And I'm wondering if a single resident of the housing facility decides that he would like to hold a Nazi rally at a public housing facility, under this bill, would there be anything that would prevent him from using a space inside the building and having marches outside of the buildings, perhaps putting signs up, having people from outside the community or outside the state come to this housing facility and walk around wearing swastikas with Nazi signs and chants, etc., all in this public housing facility? Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Jutila.
Through you, Madam Speaker. As I've indicated a number of times throughout this debate today, there's nothing in this bill that would prevent the authorities having jurisdiction over these complexes to impose the same kind of reasonable regulations that they would impose upon any tenant who wants to have some type of activity on the premises. In the example, if the tenant was trying to get hundreds of people to come and march around the facility, my assumption would be that there would be some reasonable regulations that would put some acceptable limitations on that. Through you.
Representative Dubitsky.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So there would be the exact same limitations on the Nazi Party as there would be on the Republican or Democratic Party or other parties that would also care to organize and rally and have events like that. Through you, Ms. Chairman, Ms. Speaker.
Representative Jutila.
Through you, Madam Speaker, that would be my expectation. Once again, we pay a price for democracy. Through you.
Representative Dubitsky.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, so a single resident. Oh no, I'll strike that. So if a single resident could organize such an event, would it be possible for somebody who was not a resident or a group of people who were not residents to organize the same type of event or rally or demonstration? Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Jutila.
Through you, Madam Speaker, no, it would not, as long as the authority prohibited that. There would, in other words, there'd be no limitation on the authority's ability to prohibit that where it's not a tenant who would like to have the meeting. Through you.
Representative Dubitsky.
Okay, so these types of political rallies can be held within and without the facility if sponsored by a single resident of the facility, but not somebody from outside. So the people who live in the facility get use of it when the general public cannot get use of it. Is that correct? Through you, Madam
Representative
Speaker.
Jutila.
Through you, Madam Speaker, again, the bill kind of works in the negative. What it is a prohibition on the authority prohibiting the political activity. Through you.
Representative Dubitsky.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. From your previous answer, though, I understand that in order to have access to these facilities, in order to have a rally, whether it be for a political party, a political candidate, or some other organization, one needs to be a resident. And that would give residents preference over the general public. So one of my questions is, when a political candidate who is running for office, say running for the Connecticut House of Representatives, wants to hold a rally at a public housing facility, would they need the sponsorship or the cooperation, generally, of a resident of the facility? Through you, Madam Chairman, Madam Speaker.
There you go. Representative Jutila.
Through you, Madam Speaker, that would be up to the authority. There's nothing in this bill that would prevent the authority from allowing people from the outside to do that. The only thing this bill does is prohibit the authority from prohibiting a tenant from doing that. Through you.
Representative Dubitsky.
Okay. So the bill only prohibits the authority from prohibiting a resident, but it doesn't prohibit the authority from prohibiting the public. Is that correct? Through you, Madam Speaker?
Representative Jutila.
Through you, Madam Speaker, that's correct, that it doesn't prohibit the authority from prohibiting a member of the public to be the organizer of that meeting. Now, whether or not the authority would have some other issues with that is not a part of this bill. Through you.
Representative Dubitsky.
Okay, well, I'm going to, for my hypothetical, my next set of questions, I'm going to assume that the authority under this bill will allow a resident to organize such an activity or such a rally, but not somebody from the general public, because from the proponent's answers, it sounds to me like that is a perfectly logical scenario. So if a candidate that for the House of Representatives wants to have a fundraiser or a rally at this facility, or let me even take that back. If they want to have it in a specific geographic location, has a choice of perhaps a hotel or a public housing facility. At the hotel, they would have to purchase, or they would have to rent a room, or at the public housing facility, perhaps they would just have a resident sponsor them without charge. If they chose to have it at the public housing facility, would they have to consider that a political contribution, the fair market value of the use of that room? Through you, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker.
Representative Jutila.
Through you, Madam Speaker, I don't know the answer to that. This bill doesn't address that, and they would have to make that determination and comply with other laws that don't have anything to do with this bill. Through you.
Representative Dubitsky.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If, for example, the Nazi Party had a rally at a public housing facility, and they had people walking around wearing uniforms, swastikas, and Representative O'Neill, I believe, touched on this a little bit. and there was need for additional police protection. Perhaps there's a counter rally on the street or across the street. Who would pay for that additional police protection? Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Jutila.
Through you, Madam Speaker, I guess that would be whoever concluded that they needed the police protection. Through you.
Representative Dubitsky.
Okay, so if the thank you, Madam Speaker. So if the public housing facility found that saw on their schedule that they were likely to have 100 or so Nazis on their property, and they heard that there was going to be a counter rally, and they decided that they needed protection, or they needed to make sure that there was a safe environment, and the public housing authority thought that there was a need for police protection. So if I understand your answer correctly, that the public housing facility would need to pay for the police protection. Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Jutila.
Through you, Madam Speaker, if the housing authority determined that it needed police protection, then the housing authority would be responsible for taking care of it. Through you.
Representative Dubitsky.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There was discussion about the difference between religious expression and political expression. And as I recall, the proponent questioned whether there would ever be sort of a commingling of those, and it would not be an issue. If I'm mistaken in interpreting the proponent's answers, I apologize. But I would ask that if a resident decided that she wanted to hold a anti-abortion rally, and at that anti-abortion rally there was a considerable element of religious expression and prayer, would that be covered under this bill? And would the housing authority be able to prohibit that type of activity? Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Jutila.
Through you, Madam Speaker, there's nothing in the bill that requires the housing authority to permit religious expression. There may be other laws or constitutional provisions or case law that might have an impact on their decision, but this bill would not have an impact on that. Through you.
Representative Dubitsky.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure I completely understand the answer. Would the authority be able to prohibit the prayer portion of a rally that is combined for the political anti-abortion issue and mixed with the religious? Could the authority under this bill prohibit would they have the legal right to prohibit the religious expression? Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Jutila.
Through you, Madam Speaker, nothing in this bill would prevent the authority from prohibiting the religious expression.
Representative Dubitsky.
I thank the proponent for that answer. So my question would be, how would a public housing authority determine what is political and what is religious? Would they have somebody monitoring what is going on at these events and stopping them when somebody started praying? Through you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Jutila.
Through you, Madam Speaker. Again, democracy can be messy sometimes, and these issues come up, every day in our country. And I'm not going to attempt to be the Supreme Court here and try to arbitrate a hypothetical issue between political and religious speech. Through you.
Representative Dubitsky.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the proponent for his answers. And unfortunately, I think that's exactly what we're setting up here. We're setting up a situation where we're requiring, or at least permitting, the housing authorities to determine what is political, what is religious, and essentially acting as the censors to determine what can and cannot be said at a public housing facility. And I think we're setting ourselves up here for a potentially very scary situation. I certainly support the concept of allowing everybody the free expression of political beliefs in housing, wherever they live, whether it's in public housing or anywhere else. But to have a bill that specifically carves out this one type of speech and allows an authority to prohibit other types of speech in this type of scenario, I think is a very scary infringement on free speech. And it may be intended to give more speech, but in fact what it does is it separates out between different types of speech. And I will be opposing it for that reason. Thank you, Madam Speaker.